EA head who pitched the idea of potentially charging per reload.
And also, why are you moving at a lower frame rate than anything else?
What happened to your head, friend? Are you okay?
However, they have decided to not become a free game.
It's honestly hilarious that they went and made another party pack.
Of worst company in America twice.
AAA gaming is officially dead.
Video gaming has gone downhill. It's no secret that gaming has been struggling in the last few years with monetization and rush of games, that we don't get to really experience what we once loved about gaming when we were kids. I grew up enjoying playing the games my brother would beg my parents to buy for us, and we played for hours on our PlayStation 2 and 3, never getting bored or frustrated. It was something to look forward to every day, but now I open gaming news to hear another DLC released by The Sims, or getting disappointed by new ways that a game I used to love is now trying to reach into your back pocket. Since I began to become more and more involved with games and how this industry is changing, I've seen and played games that are highly criticised and have fallen apart, but a game that was just released last year has changed what I think gaming could evolve to be, and this game was Baldur's Gate 3. And it makes me think, what makes a good game? But before I get into that, I want to show you the current state of video games with 3 simple points that I believe are what keeps games away from being good games. Gaming exploitation is nothing new, and there are constant new ways that game companies will try and get you to spend more money than you need on a game, whether that is for skins, a battle pass, DLCs, characters, or some form of currency for the game. There are plenty of examples of these in the recent years. If you've seen any shooter game in the last 4 years, you can see this exploitation take place, and a game I've played for the last 2 years is a big example of this. Overwatch 2 is a sequel to an earlier Overwatch game, and this game is a shooter with a team-based premise. You can play with a group of strangers or with your friends through parties and work together to beat a competing team, to capture points, escort payloads, and more. The second game came out in 2022 with great promises for making it bigger than the original game with its own story, PvE, a skill tree, and much more. But as we got sooner to the release of the game, Blizzard kept coming back with changes to the plan as it wasn't a goal they could reach anymore, and they would rather bring the game out sooner than make fans wait longer, which arguably would have been better. But aside from failed promises, this game is also exploiting their players by monetizing anything they can, such as a battle pass that replaced the famous loot boxes from the original game, which will grant you free things for leveling up. But the battle pass in Overwatch 2 is a lot different, and is just taking what other shooter games have been doing by having this level up grind system to get items or skins by paying a certain price. In this instance, £8.39. But the main seller for the battle pass is the mythic skin, which is a customizable skin that can be changed in many ways. The mythic skin was cool and interesting, but as more seasons started, the customizations got lazy for what was given. I feel like here's an honest with dog. I think the only reason I find them a little bit shittier because they don't have as much customization. With Kiriko's one, it actually felt like he was changing things. Like he was changing the hair, he was changing stuff. It seemed like he was actually changing things. But then Anna's one is like, where's Anna? Like it's just like, oh, 3 different skins, there you go. Like it doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't feel like a customizable skin. Another big way they monetize their game is through skins, which is no surprise, as many other games does this too. But Overwatch does it to an extreme that one skin alone without a bundle costs £12.99. And it doesn't help that new skins that come through the shop often don't get seen again for a long time, so it makes you feel like you should get them now. And this single skin was also the exact same price as the PvE missions they did end up giving us, though it wasn't the many replayable missions they promised. It was 3 story missions that came out for £12.99, which many players are pissed off by the lack of content for the price, and especially for what was promised. But shooters aren't the only ones that are exploiting their players. The Sims is a simulation franchise that has been around since the early 2000s, and their most recent Sims game, The Sims 4, has gotten so bad with DLCs it's almost laughable. Electronic Arts, the publishers for The Sims, has tripled the amount of DLCs that has been produced with The Sims 4 compared to The Sims 3, and a lot of these DLCs are either features that should be a part of the base game or could have been one pack instead of multiple. For example, when they made multiple packs around family in different generations in The Sims 4, such as parenthood, growing together, high school years, and kids rooms, which again are all surrounding generations and expanding what little we had in the base game. And if you wanted to buy all these packs out of fully expanded generations, you'd have to pay a small price of £96.96. When in The Sims 3, there was one pack that covered every generation called Generations. Though we have more in-depth detail packs with them separated, but the fact of having to justify almost spending £100 on these packs to get the content you want is ridiculous. And then adding onto packs that should just be a base game feature like weather or more corruptions, as these are basic life things and this is a life sim. The last game I want to talk about in this section is a newer game, one that isn't full of original games but comes from a beloved company, Disney. Disney Dreamlight Valley is a sim game where you run and create a valley entirely up to your imagination, with a lot to do from farming, collecting, building and going on quests, all with your favourite Disney characters. The game came into early access in the summer of 2022 with the future promise that it will be fully released free for everyone. But as we got closer to the date of release in December of 2023, it no longer became free to play and now sits at £33.49 on Steam. But they continue to promise to still provide free updates and content in the game, such as characters, realms, clothing and much more, which sounded pretty okay. But they also mentioned their pricing continued to be fair and optional for the in-game currency Moonstones. And while yes, it is optional to put money into the game, but like The Sims 4 and Overwatch, they will implement exclusive content that makes you want to get it, and the prices I wouldn't call exactly fair either. There are many ways you can use Moonstones in the game, such as buying their version of a battle pass called Star Path, packs and items through their shop, which ranges from 850 Moonstones to 4,000 Moonstones. Which, looking at how much Moonstones are, that can be tricky when they are short of the currency you need to gain it. But if you're lucky enough, you can get Moonstones outside of paying for them by finding blue chests around your valley that holds 50 Moonstones each chest, which is clearly not enough to be able to get the extra content, considering the price of a lot of the content being in the thousands. It would take you an enormous amount of time to even get close to a star path for an item, which at the end of the day is just an in-game item. Along with this, they also started to bring out DLCs that are just not worth it. A Rift in Time was a DLC that was released around the same time the game was fully released, and it's a story DLC that is a new adventure and new quests. The reviews on this DLC are mixed due to its pricing versus the content you actually receive in the end, as many people who like the DLC said there isn't enough content to justify £24.99 of a DLC. Along with that, they also locked two characters behind this paywall as well, Rapunzel and Gaston. Despite the fact Rapunzel has been in many advertisings for the original game, such as featuring her in trailers and featuring her tower in the posters, which makes it seem like she'd be added in a free update to the game, which honestly was what I was waiting for, but instead she was locked behind this paywall, which makes it very disappointing. And I can go on and on about how many games are like this, and how many are being made like this or becoming like this. And I haven't even covered pay-to-win games where you must pay for a feature that can give you a better advantage, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre with their £10 characters. I've started seeing myself drop more and more of these games because of how tiring it is just to keep going when there is something I like in a game but I must spend £25 or £12.99 just to have access to it. We all want to be able to get value for our money. We don't want to be spending a lot of money on something just for it to not work or be lackluster. And looking at how much games are relying on you to spend more money on them, it makes you think if you are actually getting any value. The next few games were big games that had a lot of excitement brought to them, but quickly players were disappointed by the quality of the games that were released. Cyberpunk 2077 is an action role-playing game that was released in 2020 in a very poor state. And while I never played this game, the news of this game being broken was not lost to me. The game was broken in so many ways that the list is too long. Though the game is a lot better now and getting a lot of praise for its redemption, it still does not excuse the fact that people spent money on this game for it to work immediately on release. We shouldn't have to wait months for a game to work when it should work in the beginning. It was so bad that it was pulled from the PlayStation stores so that people couldn't buy it anymore, and that CD Projekt Red gave full refunds for the game. And this happened again to another game called Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. This game's release was a glitchy and buggy mess back in 2021 that made you think if it was playtested at all. There were also development mistakes that could have been seen from playing the game, such as the save points being too little, causing players to be frustrated when you add on the random bugs where it would restart the player when they may have done a ton of progress.
So the door doesn't door?
This was completely out of the player's control and made the game unplayable. And when you're paying £30.99 for a game, you should not be experiencing this. You expect a game to be tested and finalized after being given to the consumer, even if they should delay it longer. People much prefer a finished game to one that is broken and unplayable. And as of right now, the game is fixed, but people still criticize the way the game was handled. Because again, despite it getting fixed, it still doesn't excuse the fact that this game, especially after delays, should have been ready for launch. It shouldn't have had game-breaking glitches that stop players from playing it or restarting players to the beginning. And these are only some examples of a game that should have been worth your money, and there are plenty more examples such as Fallout 76 or the PC version of The Last of Us, where it was literally unplayable. But all of this does leave us worried about any next game that gets released with the possibility of it not even working. When I started looking into doing this video, I wanted to hear from others about what people game for. What do people want out of games? And a lot of people had just said fun. And that sounds like a pretty simple request, right? That is the whole point of video games, is to enjoy them and have fun with them. But from hearing other people and what I've already covered, it seems like it's becoming the opposite result for gaming. Like how Overwatch 2 becomes more about buying skins or grinding a battle pass than having well-balanced characters or fixing the toxicity in the in-game matches. And with how many problems Security Breach and Cyberpunk had, that it takes away all the fun from wanting to play these games. And then Dreamlight Valley is a game that I loved so much when it was released, but now I can't stay on it for even a few minutes because of how much it's just grinding a battle pass and how they've locked behind a lot of content that you must pay for. It's exhausting and makes you not want to play. And there are so many instances where it becomes so exhausting to play certain games when you should be excited and wanting to get back on. As I said before, there is a game that I believe in and think this is what we should be supporting and pushing to being what gaming should be. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game released in August 2023 by Larian Studios, but it was in early access in 2020, willingly wanting feedback and criticism how to make the game better, and Larian listened and implemented changes and did so even when the game was released. This game is an over 200-hour worth of replayable gameplay with many choices and ways you can impact the story. And it might not be everyone's taste because of its turn-based gameplay, but it should be a game we should be talking about, especially if we want to make change in the way gaming is produced and released. And along with an amazing game with a beautiful world, story and characters, the creators Larian Studios has decided not to do DLCs for this game as they believe it to be greedy and does not align with them, as they seem more keen to start on a new game, which, yes, disappointed some players. They'd be fine with giving Larian more money for this game, which shows how good they've done this game, but ultimately understands Larian's choice and applauds it. Seeing a game company outright say that they feel it's greedy to monetize the game more is not like any company. You won't see AAA companies admitting that, and it's nice for once to hear even a small company say that. It makes them more trustworthy as they are honest and seemingly passionate about what they are creating, and for £49.99 you get an actually good game that is worth the money. Yes, there has been a few bugs in the recent months, but it's nowhere near as bad as the previous games I was shown in this list, and Larian is so quick to try and get it fixed so players can have a better experience. And this game is so good to the point of people arguing over it on Twitter for not wanting to put pressure on companies to be just like Baldur's Gate 3 because of how huge the game was and how much effort and time was put into it. A Twitter user explains that it's unrealistic, but is it really? If Larian Studios, a company made up of 400 employees, can make this massive of a video game that won multiple Game of the Year awards, who says a AAA company can't? We should be pressuring these companies to provide us with these types of full and rich games. Not give us ones that need us to pay over £1,000 to get actual content, or ones that don't work on release. Baldur's Gate 3 should be making a new standard of how gaming should be, and I'm looking forward to whatever Larian Studios brings out next, because I know it'll be worth my time and money to get. I'm not saying to drop all the other games I've shown in this list, because I will still play those games, and a lot of my content is based around those games, but we should uplift and support the games that are making a difference in this space, and recognise how badly other games treat us. And figure out what we want from games. And for me, Baldur's Gate 3 is what I want. It hits all the boxes of note in game monetization, it's worth your money, and it's so much fun. This is what a game should be.